To a poets club in Tempe, Arizona, and we would meet a couple of times a month and read to each other the poetry that we've written. And there was a lady in one of these classes. She always came, and she was a nice person, beautiful, a beautiful woman, and an older woman, however, and I admired her. And so I wrote a poem about her. Her name was Jean Humphrey Chalet. Dog-eared pictures reveal the beauty of youth known long ago. Too bad we weren't acquainted before time tried collect and toll. She's still witty and mischievous, artistically creative, actually innovative, and complimentary to her friends like pure gold. And when she smiles, her eyes crinkle and sparkle like cellophane. How much time has failed, unless you count the passing of years as growing old? Here's one I wrote about a little girl named Carolyn Ann. It's called Irredeemable. Following an adored father and his hard-working mule, a little pig-tailed girl experiences the coolness of freshly turned earth on the bottom of her feet and between her toes, and the smell of warming springtime. She will never forget these days of youthfulness, for she is destined to talk about them with another little pig-tailed girl one day. The agitation. I told you this would be sometimes old stuff, so I'm reading in the section where the poems refer to another era in bygone days. And still today there are cowboys, and this could happen to any one of them. Muscles bunch and then explode as Cayuse sends unwanted load in a heap to desert floor, quivering and snorting in dusty cloud, neither one now very proud, as the wrangler looks around from cactus bed upon the ground. With buttock muscles aching sore, he hobbles toward the bunkhouse door, which is only 3 miles more. I don't know if you can see this, but I drew a picture about it. Can you see? Can you see it? There he is being bucked off into a cactus bed. Here's one, this discovery, and it goes back. It goes back into the 1800s. Maple trees and spring wildflowers unmolested by man surround a distraught creek that could speak of a hole dug in the sand. Pure wilderness is hard to find, but harder yet to see is a vein of ore that lies beneath a hole filled with debris. Only last week, the storm-swollen creek pushed the beaver's house aside, and once again the hole can be seen for which the miner died. When warned to flee and save his life some 100 years ago, he stayed with his gold until his death, dealt by an Indian's bow. He could not leave the greatest strike any man will ever see. Maple leaves and spring wildflowers near a hole filled with debris. Debris could be anything. Materialism, things that man has created and thought valuable. But what is really valuable is the things that God has made. Wildflowers, maple leaves, a beautiful creek, and the beaver's house, which covered his discovery, a vein of gold, and nobody knows it's there. It's called Too Bad. It's not an uplifting poem. Now the hangman's noose snaps tight with the sound of trapdoor ringing, as echoing thunder might. No heavenly choir is singing, and only void exposed to light eternity is bringing. That was a hanging. Oh, I like this one. It's called The Old Prospector. Golden pebbles hide in a pothole just below the surface of the Colorado River, enough to fill the bed of a pickup truck. For over a millennium they have gathered as the current pulled them to this resting place. They'll go no further. They wait to be discovered at the place where I've chosen to wash my socks. So here's an old prospector that's getting ready to make the discovery of his life. With wings spread wide, the eagle flies high above the storm. Fearless he'll ride the storm-filled skies, his elevated form above the foe, and all the woe of futile earthly cries, till peace be restored. There are some like that who would avoid confrontation, who would avoid an argument. And so they stand off and wait till peace is restored. Here's a poem about a man, and they may still do this today, where a man and a horse will ride along a great length of space, checking the barbed wire fences to make sure that the cattle will not stray. And it's a job being a cowboy. And this cowboy got caught in a winter storm, in fact, a blizzard. And the poem is called Isolated. Looking out through line shack's frosted pane, I see icicles hanging from barbed wire fencing near Charlie, my horse's frozen remains. Poor Charlie, who has given so much and who has asked for so little, he'll give again following his demise. I would starve otherwise. Listen to that howling wind. Ooh, the unrelenting winter intensifies. My grandma and grandpa on my mother's side were called John and Henry Hatfield. And no remembers John and Henry Hatfield, nor thousands of others who lived when they lived. They were part of another generation. They reared their children well, lived loving Jesus, and died. Once their grandchildren are deceased, no one will ever think of them again. I have no idea who my great-grandparents were, and neither will my children know John and Henry Hatfield, John and Henrietta Hatfield. At one time they meant a great deal to somebody, but now they're gone, and soon no living human being will be able to recall them or anything about them. They're just a minute link in an extremely long chain that connects me to Adam and Eve Hatfield. Someday, no one will ever know or care that I was once a living soul, except God and those that I have introduced to him. My mother had 3 sisters and a brother. So I had 4 aunts and uncles. For some reason, my grandma and Grandpa Hatfield named their boy Zester. And I wrote a poem about it. It's fictitious. It's not true, but it could have happened. And it's interesting to think about. When Uncle Zester strummed the banjo one Saturday night back in the hills, Papa reached for his fiddle case and a jug from one of the stills. We had a galvanized wash tub bass that made my fingers blister, and a one-eyed dobro neighbor whose eye never left my sister. When the instruments came together, she and Mama rolled back the rug. For sure dancing would be a commencing as Papa took a slug from the jug. Dust was raised from the wooden floor, and hands got red from clapping. Our music crescendoed higher and higher. Then something miraculous happened. Grandpa's Civil War magnolia rifle vibrated loose from the mantel. It blew our Papa's jug apart, just leaving him holding the handle. The blast put an end to the party. Smoke and dust settled back to the floor. Mama says it was a sign from heaven, because our Papa won't drink anymore. Before long, we all got saved, including our one-eyed neighbor. Oh, yes, We still make music together, but only with a gospel flavor. I have four children. The eldest called Pamela, and the next to the eldest called Deborah. And I wrote a poem, and I put their name in the poem. It's called The Big Mistake. He'd lived in the he had lived a long time in the desert. That's why he rarely smiled. You wouldn't want to cross him, not by a country mile. He protected what little he had, like a mama mountain lion. Though mean as a rattlesnake, one night I saw him crying. In his hand was a picture of two little girls. The smallest he called Debbie. Pam had all the curls. He hadn't seen them, he went on to tell me, for over 20 years. A lifetime of regret was the reason for his tears. He and their mother, it seems, had gone their separate ways. He chose to seek his fortune, leaving the girls for her to raise. The fortune that eluded him was lost away back then. When he left the little family, he wished he had again. Oh, this one. My wife and I read stories about mountain men. And this is a poem about a mountain man that left the fort to go out a little ways to take care of some personal business. And it's called Good for Something. Leaving behind my old moccasins and some well-worn buckskin breeches, I come across a patch of ivy, and the poison ivy itches. Going back to Fort Bridger, and the bestest friend a man could have, old Gabe told me to try some smelly bear and beaver sap. Now I keep on a-itching, scratching way down past the bone, but pesky skeeters and other critters, sure enough, would leave me the heck alone. During the mountain men days of the 18th and 19th centuries, Jim Bridger was well known among the Indians and fur traders. In his later years, he operated a trading post at Utah's Green River, and a mountain pass has been named after him, and a national forest in Wyoming. His friends called him Gabe.